The grand hall of HFY was glowing like a morning star, bright and soft, as if the sky itself had stepped inside. Tall silver pillars rose higher than any tree on earth. The floor looked like a sheet of clear ice, smooth and shining under the warm light. Thousands of HFY nobles stood in silence, dressed in clothes that shimmered with soft colors, blue, gold, violet, and pale white. Their wings and glowing markings made the entire place look like a garden of living lights. It was the most important day in the HFY Empire. Today, Queen Lyrina would choose her mate. Everyone believed they already knew what kind of person she would choose. They whispered and guessed, their voices small but filled with excitement. They were expecting someone powerful, someone from a royal bloodline, someone who could stand beside their queen like a second star. Lyrina entered the hall slowly, step by step, with grace so natural it felt like the world moved around her. Her dress flowed behind her like liquid silver, and her eyes held a soft glow. She was beautiful, but not in a sharp or cold way. She was beautiful like calm water, like the soft wind before sunrise, but inside her heart, there was a storm. She walked with confidence, but she felt a tightness in her chest. Today was important, not just for the empire, but for her life. She tried to keep her face calm, but her mind was full of memories, ones she kept hidden even from herself. People bowed as she passed. Warriors with blades of light bent on one knee. Scholars wearing crystal circlets lowered their heads. Princes from distant systems placed their hands on their hearts. All of them waited, believing they were worthy of her. But among the glowing crowd, standing at the very edge like a shadow, was someone no one noticed. A human. Ethan Vale. He wore simple clothing without jewels or ornaments. He did not shine like the HFY. He had no wings, no psychic markings, no supernatural gifts. He looked almost breakable among these tall, elegant beings. He had been invited only because he was a diplomat from Earth. A polite gesture, nothing more. No one expected him to stand close. No one thought he would matter, not even Ethan himself. He kept telling himself he should not be here. This was not his world. This was not his ceremony. He should stand silent and invisible. He should keep his distance from the queen who lived in a world far above his own. But even with all these thoughts, he could not stop his eyes from following her. Every time her silver dress moved, his heart moved with it. Ethan swallowed and looked away. Don't be foolish, he told himself. She's a queen. You're just you. But memories came back, uninvited and sharp. 2 years ago, a forest, a storm, a wounded stranger he had found lying in the mud. A woman who did not tell him her name. He carried her through rain and darkness. He kept her warm by a fire. He talked to her even when she barely responded. He had stayed awake all night to make sure she lived, and she did. Then, before the sun rose, she disappeared without a word. He never knew she was royalty, and he never knew she remembered. But today, as Queen Lyrina walked farther into the hall, she lifted her eyes just once. Only once. Her gaze swept the room, and then stopped. Just for a heartbeat. Stopped on him. Ethan felt his breath catch. His chest tightened. She looked away quickly, but something inside him whispered, she remembers. He didn't want to hope. Hope was dangerous. Hope hurt. Hope was a soft thing in a world made of stone. But his heart, foolish and human, still beat faster. Lyrina continued walking, keeping her face calm. But inside, her thoughts were trembling. She had waited 2 years to see him again. She had searched for him secretly. And when she learned he was on HFY as a diplomat, she had been relieved in a way she could not explain. But she was a queen now, and the empire expected power from her. Yet as she reached the center of the hall, the golden lights glowing around her, one truth kept whispering inside her chest. Power cannot warm a lonely heart, but kindness can. And today, she would have to choose her future. Her mate, her destiny, and maybe her heart. Queen Lyrina stood at the center of the grand hall, her silver dress glowing under the golden lights. Nobles surrounded her in a wide circle, waiting for her to begin the choosing ceremony. Their eyes shone with excitement, pride, and hunger. Every suitor believed they deserved her. Every family wanted power. Every clan hoped to be tied to the throne. But Lyrina's thoughts were drifting far away from the shining hall. Far away from power. Far away from duty. Her mind traveled back to something soft. Something warm. Something human. A memory she kept hidden in the deepest corner of her heart. 2 years ago, she had not been a queen. She had been just Lyrina, the crown princess who often escaped the palace to breathe fresh air and feel free for a few hours. She had thought she could handle anything. She was trained in combat, diplomacy, and psychic defense. She believed nothing could touch her. But on that day, a border attack changed everything. She had been caught in an ambush. Poisoned, injured, lost in a forest where even the sky looked unfamiliar. Her guards had died trying to protect her. She had almost given up, and then a human found her, a simple man. Walking alone, exhausted, carrying a small bag, no weapon. No shield. He should have been scared of her glowing markings, her strange eyes, her alien presence, but he wasn't. He had stepped toward her slowly with worry in his voice. "Are you hurt? Hey. Stay awake." He had carried her in his arms. Even though her weight was nothing like a human woman's, he had kept her warm with his own jacket. He had talked to her for hours, telling stories of Earth's oceans, its storms, its strange animals, and the quiet hum of city nights. She had listened through pain, comforted by the softness in his voice. He never asked who she was. He never wanted anything from her. He just wanted her to live, and before morning. She had vanished from his sight because her people had finally found her. She left without saying goodbye. She had to. Her identity could not be revealed, but she had carried one thing with her: his kindness, his eyes, his voice, his gentle hands, his name, Ethan. Vale. She had whispered it to herself again and again until it became a part of her heart. Now, standing in the hall, that same human stood, far in the shadows. She tried not to look at him again, but she could feel him, like warmth in a cold room, like a soft breeze in a silent world. Her advisor approached her with a polite bow. "My queen, the ceremony must proceed. The Empire awaits your decision." Lyrina nodded, pushing the memory away, but it refused to leave. She turned to her suitors. One by one, the first was the Water Prince, tall and elegant, with flowing blue markings. He bowed deeply. "My queen," he said proudly. "With me, your empire gains control of 4 oceans." The nobles whispered in approval. Power, authority, territory. Lyrina smiled politely, but her heart remained quiet. The next was the Fire General, broad shoulders, blazing eyes, energy crackling around his fists. "My queen," he said, pounding his chest, "I can protect you with the strength of 1,000 warriors." Another wave of approving whispers. Yet Lyrina's heart stayed still. Then came the Starseer, his eyes glowing white with visions of the future. "My queen," he murmured, "with me, you will see every danger before it comes." Her people loved that idea: safety, vision, wisdom. But once again, she felt nothing, not even a spark. Each suitor offered something valuable: power, strength, prestige, safety, but none of them offered what she truly remembered from that night in the forest: warmth, kindness, humanity. She lifted her eyes for a brief moment, letting them wander across the hall. And then, her breath caught. Ethan was watching her, not with hunger like the others, not with pride or arrogance, but with quiet confusion, with a gentle respect, with a heart full of feelings he was too afraid to voice. He wasn't trying to win her. He wasn't trying to impress her. He didn't want the throne. He was simply there. And that, more than anything, made her chest ache with something deep and real. Her advisor whispered again, "My queen, the people expect you to choose someone powerful." Lyrina's eyes softened. But what if true strength was not power? What if true strength was a heart brave enough to give, even when it has nothing to gain? She touched her chest lightly, calming her racing heartbeat. Today, she would have to choose duty, or the quiet memory of a human who once saved her life without knowing who she was. And in that vast hall of glowing nobles, she felt something she should not feel. She felt her heart leaning slowly, painfully toward the shadow where Ethan stood, toward the man who had no wings, no power, no throne, only a heart that had once held her without fear. The grand hall was alive with energy, brighter than ever. The nobles had grown restless, their whispers turning into murmurs, then into quiet chants of encouragement for their favorite suitors. Every eye was fixed on the queen, every thought on the one who would stand beside her. Each candidate now had a chance to prove themselves, not with words alone, but with actions, with skills, with power. The first challenger stepped forward. His arms glowed with soft, liquid light. He raised his hands, and a column of water shot into the air, twisting and spinning like a dancing serpent. The nobles gasped. The crystal floor reflected the water in 1,000 patterns, and their applause rang like thunder. The prince bowed low to Lyrina, his face proud and certain that he had captured her attention. Next came a warrior from the northern planets. His body shimmered with fire energy. He stomped the floor, and the hall seemed to tremble. Flames roared around him, forming symbols of war and conquest in the air. The nobles cheered again, some even shouting his name. Lyrina clapped politely, her face serene, her heart quiet. Then came a scholar, his eyes glowing with visions of the cosmos. He raised his hands, and stars appeared around him, spinning in perfect orbits. He whispered in a language only some could understand, predicting dangers, disasters, and victories. The nobles gasped, many bowing, impressed with the sheer display of intelligence and foresight. And through all of this, Ethan stood quietly at the edge of the hall. He felt small. He felt out of place. Each display of skill made his own human abilities feel like nothing. He had no glowing skin, no psychic powers, no wings. He was just human. He wanted to leave. He wanted to disappear into the shadows and avoid embarrassing himself. Every instinct told him to run. Yet, despite all his fear, he could not. He could not stop looking at Lyrina. She was not like the glowing, distant images in the holo recordings he had studied. She was real. She was here. She was alive, and she moved through the hall with grace, with quiet authority, with a presence that made the air itself bend toward her. Her eyes kept drifting toward him. Just once, just a flicker, but it was enough. That small glance made Ethan's heart pound like a drum. He forced himself to focus on the ceremony, telling himself it was impossible. He was nothing compared to these beings. He could not belong in this hall, in this moment. He could not possibly be considered, but Lyrina's mind was no longer only on duty. She watched the suitors display their powers. The water columns, the fire, the spinning stars, all of them impressive. All of them commanding. But in her chest, there was a hollow space no skill could fill. The strength they showed was vast, yet something was missing. Her heart whispered the truth she had tried to ignore. None of them saved me. None of them ever cared for me without expectation. The memory of Ethan returned in sharp focus, the way he had carried her, spoken to her, protected her without thought for reward or recognition. He had done what no warrior or scholar or prince could do. He had risked himself purely to save her life. And now he was here. Watching, waiting, the nobles began to sense the tension in her expression. Whispers turned into confusion. Some frowned, wondering why she did not react more strongly to the displays of power. Others speculated quietly among themselves, their curiosity growing. Who had captured her attention so subtly, so silently? The suitors did not notice the smallest glances, the quiet heartbeat of a queen torn between duty and memory. They continued to display their abilities, one after another, each more impressive than the last. Lyrina's chest tightened with every spectacle. The hall expected her to choose power. Her empire demanded it. Tradition demanded it. Yet in the middle of all this, she felt a strange pull toward one corner of the hall. Toward the human who could not perform these displays. Toward Ethan Vale. Toward the man who had once shown her that courage was not measured by skill or energy, but by the heart. Her hand twitched at her side, almost as if it knew the answer before her mind could admit it. She tried to push the thought away, tried to return her focus to the suitors, tried to uphold her duty. But the truth persisted. Strength is more than power. Leadership is more than might. The bravest heart may come in the smallest, quietest body. Ethan looked up, feeling a soft awareness of her gaze. He did not understand it, did not dare hope for it, but something inside him stirred. His chest tightened. Something deep, human, and unexplainable called to him. And in that shining hall filled with light and noise, something shifted. A quiet moment stretched like a thread across the air, uniting them silently, invisibly. The nobles could not see it. The suitors could not feel it. But the queen and the human shared a spark of memory, a connection. A bond unbroken by time or distance. And neither of them knew that the first real test, the one that would prove everything, was about to begin. The grand hall had never been this quiet. Even the soft hum of the crystal pillars seemed to pause, waiting. Lyrina's eyes scanned the crowd of suitors, her heartbeat steady but tense. The nobles expected a display of skill, another series of feats to impress the queen. But tradition had one final test, a test that even she had not fully anticipated. From the shadows above, a dark shape shifted. The hall's golden lights dimmed for a moment as a shadowy creature was released into the center. Its eyes glowed like burning coals. Its claws scraped the crystal floor, leaving faint streaks of black smoke. A low growl filled the air, vibrating through the walls, through the pillars, through every bone in the hall. The nobles gasped. Panic rippled like waves. "The creature of shadow," whispered one of the ministers, fear in his voice. "It is the final trial. Only the bravest may act." The suitors reacted immediately. The water prince raised a shield of swirling water, blocking the creature's first strike. The fire general ignited flames around himself, ready to strike back. The star seer whispered strange words, trying to anticipate the creature's movements. Each candidate fought with power, each showing courage, each desperate to prove worthiness. Ethan Vale stood frozen at the edge of the hall. He had no power, no shield, no weapon. He was human, fragile, and unprepared for what was about to happen. His heart pounded painfully. His mind screamed at him to step back, to hide, to vanish. He was nothing, and yet he could not look away. The creature lunged. Its claws aimed straight for Lyrina, who was standing near the center, poised but unarmed. Even the most powerful suitors were momentarily distracted, calculating their moves. Their attacks would take time. Time the queen might not have. Ethan saw her clearly, just a heartbeat away from danger. Something inside him snapped, a quiet human instinct, older than logic or reason. He did not think. He did not plan. He ran. His legs moved faster than he knew they could. He dove in front of her. The shadow creature struck with a swiftness that made the air hiss. Ethan felt a burning pain as one of its claws scraped across his side. He gritted his teeth, gripping her shoulders and pushing her down to the floor. The hall froze. Nobles, ministers, and suitors alike watched in stunned silence. The creature roared and lunged again, but the warriors finally rallied, striking it with combined force. Light and energy clashed with darkness, shaking the crystal walls. The beast fell, subdued, but the hall's attention remained fixed on Ethan. He lay on the floor, bleeding, exhausted, barely able to breathe. Every inch of him ached. Every thought screamed at him that he had no right to be here. No right to touch the queen. No right to risk himself for someone so distant, so extraordinary. But Lyrina knelt beside him. Her hands shook as she pressed gently against his side, feeling the warm blood, the rapid heartbeat. Her eyes, wide with shock and gratitude, glimmered with something else, something deep, almost dangerous in its intensity. "Why? Why would you do that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Ethan's lips curved into a weak, painful smile. "Because your life matters more than mine," he said, his voice rough but steady. Lyrina's breath caught. The hall, filled with awe and fear moments ago, fell into a stunned silence. The nobles were frozen, unsure how to react. They had never seen such courage, not measured in power or skill, but in pure, selfless action. Some whispered, in disbelief, he's only human. Others asked, why would the queen allow him to be so close? And some, in hushed tones, admitted, perhaps. Strength is not what we thought. Her heart raced as she helped him sit up. "Ethan, you could have died," she said softly, placing her hand on his cheek. Her touch was gentle, almost afraid of shattering the fragile human. "You didn't have to. You didn't even know if I was real." He looked into her eyes, pale with blood, but bright with courage. "I know who you are, even if you don't see me the same way. I knew you needed help. I couldn't do nothing." A hush fell over the hall again, heavier than before. Even the suitors lowered their heads, some in shame, some in silent awe. They had prepared to fight, to display, to impress. But none of them had done what Ethan had done. None had risked everything without hope of reward. None had acted from the heart. Lyrina's chest tightened with emotions she could barely contain. Relief, gratitude, admiration, and something more. Something forbidden in her role as queen, yet undeniable. Something that had waited for this very moment to surface. She whispered, almost to herself, "A heart like yours is rarer than any power in this hall." And the hall, still recovering from the chaos, sensed the quiet power of her words. Something had shifted. Something had begun. Because courage, true courage, had walked into the hall in the form of a simple human. The grand hall had never been so quiet. Even the crystal pillars seemed to hold their breath. The shadow creature was defeated, lying motionless on the floor. Yet all attention was now on the human who had risked everything to protect the queen. Ethan Vale, bloodied and trembling, sat on the cold floor. His chest rising and falling as he tried to catch his breath. The nobles whispered among themselves, their voices hushed, uncertain. Some could not believe what they had just seen. Others frowned in anger, their pride wounded. They had spent lifetimes preparing for this moment, training their minds and bodies, mastering powers that could shape planets, And yet here was a human, powerless, ordinary, fragile, who had done what none of them had dared. Did you see that? One prince whispered, his hands trembling. He protected the queen, without powers. Without training. Impossible, murmured another. How could a human? The murmurs grew louder, spreading through the hall. Shock turned into disbelief. Some nobles glanced at Lirana, expecting her to be angry, disappointed, or at least cautious. Instead, she knelt beside Ethan, her hands steady, holding him gently as though he were the most precious thing in the universe. Her eyes, bright and intense, met his. For a moment, the hall faded away. The nobles, the glowing pillars, the waiting suitors, none of it mattered. There was only him and her, a human and a queen. Bound by something deeper than power, deeper than titles, deeper than tradition. You risked your life, she whispered softly, her fingers brushing his side where the creature had scratched him. You didn't have to. Why? Ethan's lips trembled into a weak smile. Because your life is worth more than mine, he said, his voice rough with pain but filled with honesty. I couldn't just watch. I couldn't do nothing. Her chest tightened. Relief, fear, admiration, and something far stronger mingled together inside her. She had faced armies, storms, and enemies across the stars. Yet nothing had moved her like this moment. Nothing had made her feel so alive, so human, so understood. The nobles could hardly believe their eyes. They had always measured worth by strength, skill, lineage, or intelligence. Power had been the law of their world. And now they saw a human, a creature so small and fragile by comparison, standing taller than the mightiest warriors simply by choosing to act. Whispers turned into silence. Some were angry. Some were impressed. Some were confused. Is this a test? One minister asked quietly. Has the queen lost her mind? But Lirana paid no attention to them. Her gaze remained fixed on Ethan. She could feel the quiet pulse of his bravery, the warmth of his heart, the honesty of his soul. No one else in the hall had moved without fear, without calculation. They had acted to impress, to win, to follow tradition. But he had acted for her, for nothing but the truth of his heart. Slowly, she helped him to stand. His legs wobbled, his body weak, but his eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. She could see the shock in the other nobles' faces, the tension in the suitors' hands, the quiet awe of some who realized that courage was more than power. You could have died, Lirina said softly, her voice trembling with emotion she barely controlled. You could have been gone, and yet you still came forward. Ethan shook his head. I couldn't let anything happen to you. Not after everything. Not after what you mean. The hall gasped collectively. Some ministers whispered warnings. Some nobles muttered complaints. But the words seemed empty, insignificant, meaningless against the quiet force of what had just happened. Lirana's heart raced. She felt the weight of the empire pressing down on her, the expectations of generations whispering for her to choose wisely. But a deeper voice, her own heart, long silenced by duty, spoke louder than tradition. This is the choice. This is courage. This is the one who matters. Her fingers brushed his cheek, gentle and tentative, yet firm enough to convey all the emotions she had held inside for years. Relief, gratitude, admiration, something forbidden, yet undeniable. Something that had waited for this very moment to bloom. Ethan flinched slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of her gaze. He did not understand all that was happening around him. The whispers of shocked nobles, the sudden silence of the hall, the unspoken tension in the air. He only knew that she was looking at him not as a weak human, not as an outsider, but as someone who mattered. And in that moment, the Grand Hall of Isheri realized something profound. Strength was not only in power. Honor was not only in lineage. In courage. True courage could come from the humblest heart. The nobles, the suitors, the ministers, they all waited. Their eyes flicked between Lirana and Ethan, unsure of what was to come next. The queen's choice had not yet been spoken. But the hall already sensed a shift, a quiet, unstoppable force that no one could deny. For the first time in generations, the empire witnessed something unexpected, the courage of humanity, standing proudly in the shadow of alien grandeur. And Lirana knew, deep inside, that she could no longer ignore what her heart had whispered for years. The grand hall was filled with a tense, almost sacred silence. Every noble, every suitor, every minister held their breath. The shadow creature had been defeated. The displays of power had ended. And yet, the moment had not passed. All eyes were now on Queen Lirana. Even the air seemed to hold its breath, waiting for her next move. Ethan Vale, bloodied and trembling, stood in the center of the hall. His side still stung from the creature's claws, and his legs wobbled from exhaustion. He had risked everything, and now he wondered if it mattered. If the queen would even see him as someone worthy, someone more than a weak human in a world of giants. Lyrina's gaze never left him. Every suitor's display of strength, every grand gesture of power faded in her mind. They were impressive, yes, but none had moved her heart. None had risked their life simply to protect her without thought of reward or ambition. None had acted purely from the heart. Her chest tightened as she took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of the empire pressing on her, the expectations of thousands of nobles and ministers, the traditions of generations. And yet, inside something stronger and older whispered, louder than duty, louder than power. This is the one who matters. One by one, she looked at the other suitors. The Water Prince's blue eyes glimmered with disappointment. The Fire General's flames flickered nervously. The Starseer's glowing eyes held unspoken fear. They had prepared their whole lives for this moment, expecting triumph. And yet, they now stood still, uncertain, realizing that none of their power could compare to the courage they had just witnessed. Lyrina's hand twitched slightly. She reached for something more than ritual, more than ceremony. She reached for truth. She walked slowly across the crystal floor, the gold light glinting on her flowing dress. Each step echoed like a drumbeat, steady and deliberate, filling the hall with anticipation. Ethan's eyes widened. He had never seen a queen move like this, so human, so vulnerable, yet so certain. His heart raced, a mix of fear, hope, and disbelief. Could this really be happening? Could she? The queen stopped in front of him. Her gaze softened, but it was strong, unwavering. She reached out her hand and lifted his, the gesture simple, yet heavier than any crown or scepter. The hall gasped collectively, as if the air itself had been stolen from them. "Ethan Vale of Earth," she said, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I choose you." Shock rippled through the nobles. Whispers erupted like sudden storms. "Impossible!" One minister exclaimed. "A human? A weak human?" Some dropped to their knees in disbelief. Some clenched their fists, their pride wounded by a choice they could not understand. Others stared with quiet awe, realizing that they were witnessing something extraordinary. A queen who followed her heart rather than tradition, who saw strength in courage and kindness rather than bloodlines or power. Ethan's body froze. His lips trembled. He felt unworthy, overwhelmed, almost too stunned to speak. "Your queen." Lyrina's fingers brushed his cheek gently, steadying him, reassuring him. "You saved me," she whispered. "You risked yourself when no one else could or would. That is true strength, Ethan. That is courage. That is love." Tears welled in his eyes, not from pain, but from disbelief and emotion. He had never expected this, never dared hope. And yet here she was, the queen of 1,000 worlds, looking at him with warmth, admiration, and something far deeper, something that spoke to the very core of his soul. The nobles murmured again, realizing that the queen's choice was final. Power could not override courage. Lineage could not override heart. And as the crystal pillars reflected the golden light of the hall, the whispers of generations seemed to bow to the truth they had just witnessed. Lyrina stepped closer, her hand still on his. "I choose not the strongest, not the wealthiest, not the most powerful," she said softly, but her voice carried across the hall. "I choose the one who showed me what it truly means to care, to risk, to love without expectation. I choose the one who has the bravest heart of all." Ethan's lips trembled into a smile. I don't deserve this," he whispered, shaking. She lifted his chin gently with one finger, forcing him to meet her gaze. "You do, Ethan, you always did. And now the world will see what I have known for a long time. Strength is measured by the heart, not by power, and you have the bravest heart of all." The grand hall erupted not in noise, but in awe. Even the ministers who had doubted, even the nobles who had scoffed, bowed their heads in respect. For the first time in history, the empire witnessed something no one could have expected. A human chosen by the alien queen. A simple heart standing proudly amidst 1,000 powers. Ethan's chest swelled with a strange, overwhelming mixture of fear, joy, and disbelief. Lyrina smiled at him, and in that moment, the universe seemed to pause, as if holding its breath to witness a love that defied logic, tradition, and expectation. And in that pause, something eternal was born, a bond stronger than any empire. Braver than any warrior and purer than any crown. The queen had chosen. The human had been recognized.